Today we're going to be talking about unit cubes and solid figures. This is the fifth lesson in chapter 11, geometry. So the beginning of this chapter we were talking a lot about different polygons, quadrilaterals, and triangles and classifying them. So we're kind of going to get away from that and we're going to now move on to the next topic in our geometry unit, which talks about volume. So volume in a nutshell is how much something can hold. So to kind of understand how we find volume, we are going to literally first talk about the building blocks of volume. So our essential question for this lesson is, what is a unit cube and how can you use a unit cube to build a solid figure? So by the end of this video, you will be able to answer both of these questions. So let's talk first about our one and only vocabulary word, unit cube. A unit cube by definition is a cube that has the length, width, and height of one unit. So if we look at this first image here, the purple unit cube, we can determine that the length, the width, and the height of this cube all has the same measure of 1. So length, width, and height, let's talk about that first. So when we're looking at the length of something, we are looking at the distance from the left to the right. The width is from the front to the back, and the height is from the top to the bottom. So think in your head about where you've seen something that's in the shape of this unit cube. You might think of a dice, for example, or one of our base 10 blocks. The ones cube looks exactly like this. So this cube has the same measurement from length, width, and the height. We also know by looking at this picture that this is what's known as a three-dimensional figure. So we were looking at two-dimensional figures in our last lessons from last week. What you can see inside of this three-dimensional figure is actually a two-dimensional figure. Do you know what that figure is, or that polygon is, for example? It is in fact a square. So we can see on this unit cube we have many different squares. Now these squares have a special name. These are what are called the faces of the unit cube. So a unit cube is made up of actually 6 faces, and we're going to jump to this big picture here. So if I were to take this unit cube and I were to cut it along all of these black lines called edges and flatten it out, this is what a unit cube would look like. You can see that it's made up of 6 different faces. So if I were to fold all of these lines and then fold this all up, it would create a unit cube. You could actually print this template out and you could actually do that yourself if you wanted to see. If we were in school, we would actually be doing that just to kind of see what a unit cube is made of. So what I want you to take away from this, a unit cube has a length, width, and height of 1 unit, and each one of these squares is called a face, and a unit cube has 6 of them. So now let's talk about using unit cubes to create what are called rectangular prisms. So rectangular prisms, in a simplified definition, are three-dimensional rectangles. So we can use unit cubes to create these rectangular prisms. So I have an example of a rectangular prism over here, and we are going to count the cubes that we use to make this rectangular prism. So remember, the unit cubes measure length, width, and height is 1. So let's first look and measure the length of this entire rectangular prism. So I can do that by counting the blocks from left to right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A total of 8 units from the left to the right. That's the length of my prism. Now let's count the width, so the distance from the front to the back. So I can count 1 and 2. So the width from front to back is 2. And now I'm going to count the height, or the cubes from the top to the bottom. And this measurement is 1. So we have all 3 of these measurements to make up this rectangular prism. I can actually count each one of these cubes. So I know that the length is 8 units by 2 units by 1 unit, or I could actually count some of the faces here. If I count the faces on top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I know that this is made up of 16 units. Now be careful. You are not counting the individual faces of this rectangular prism. That is counting the faces, not the unit. Remember, the unit is made up of 6 different faces. So this whole thing isn't 3 units, it's 1 unit because we have all these different faces. So just keep that in mind. We're not counting those individual faces. You're thinking of this as a cube that's being stacked together. Okay, now it is our turn. So what I'd like you to do is after I am finished explaining the directions, I want you to pause the video and I want you to count how many unit cubes it takes to make each one of the figures shown below. So go ahead and pause and we'll come back and see what we get. So example 1, let's take a look here at our length, width, and height. Let's go blue. So my length, again, is the distance from left to right. So I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 unit cubes. My width, so from front to back, I count 1 unit cube. And the height, so top to bottom, I count 1, 2, 3 unit cubes. Length, width, and the height. Now I can count them. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we get a total of 12 unit cubes. If you think back to an array, we have 3 rows of 4. I can make that into an array or a multiplication fact. 3 times 4, 12 units. Example 2 might look a little different from the other 2 examples we've seen. So let's explore this one a little bit more. So our length is 1, 2, 3 units. We have a width of 2 units and a height of 2 units. So if I were to just count the number of unit cubes I see, I would see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is not the number of unit cubes it takes to create this figure. So these 2 unit cubes, we only see the unit cubes that are on this top layer. Okay, think about science. Things don't just float in the air, okay? There are actually 2 unit cubes that are underneath these 2 cubes. So just because we can't see them does not mean they aren't there. We also can support this by looking at our length, width, and our height. So we know that this is 2 cubes deep and 2 cubes high, as well as 3 cubes long. So it wouldn't make sense for us to have a void there because these measurements wouldn't be correct. So if I were to take that into account, I would have this exact same figure on the back part of this rectangular prism. So that in total then would give me 12 unit cubes. So example 3 looks very different from example 1 and example 2 because this is not a rectangular prism. This is an irregular prism. So this was unit cubes being put together in a different kind of way. So we can count the number of cubes we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is made up of 7 unit cubes. Another way that we can look at unit cubes and rectangular prisms or irregular prisms is to compare them. So example 1, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to see how many unit cubes make up each of these figures. And then we're going to compare the number of unit cubes per figure. So for example 1, this first figure on the left is made up of 5 unit cubes. The figure on the right is made up of 5 unit cubes. So now we're going to compare them. Is the figure on the left greater than, less than, or equal to the figure on the right? So 5 is equal to 5. So what that means is it takes the same number of unit cubes to create this figure than it does this figure. Even though they look different, they take the same number of cubes. Example 2. We can see that the figure on the left is made up of 4 unit cubes and the figure on the right is made up of 5 unit cubes. 4 is less than 5. So it takes more unit cubes to make this figure than it does to make this figure. Now it is your turn. So on your own, you're going to do the following things. First thing you're going to do is review the lesson 11.5 notes that I've posted in Schoology. Read through them and watch this video again if necessary. Next, you're going to complete the independent practice. Unit cubes and solid figures. You're going to be telling me how many unit cubes make up each figure. Then you're going to complete a discussion question about how two figures are related. Make sure that you write all of your responses in complete sentences. Next, you're going to play a game that's called Count the Cubes. This game is a timed game that starts out easy and then gets more challenging as you master each level. So essentially, all you have to do is count the number of cubes. You will notice that they start to become less of rectangular prisms and more of just unit cubes kind of clumped together. So you have to determine how many unit cubes are in that figure. And remember, again, we can't have unit cubes floating in the air, so there may be unit cubes that you do not see in these figures. The final thing on our agenda is to catch up on any missing or incomplete work from last week. I will be sending Schoology messages out to those students that I do not have work from for certain assignments for both math and science, so double check your messages to make sure you haven't gotten one from me. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out in Schoology or on Class Dojo, and I will answer your questions as soon as I can. I hope that you have a great day, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye!